On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1968. We're going to be taking a look at Pete Seeger, and he's going to be performing Where Have All the Flowers Gone? Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, we'll get Pete up on screen, and I'm just going to leave in the little intro that he gives to the song as well, and we'll see how he gets on.
A song that I wrote 10 years ago has become well known because of another gracious lady, Marlene Dietrich. She sings it in a different language than I wrote it in, but I think it sounds even better, even though I can't sing it all. She starts off, Sag mir, wo die Blumen sind. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Girls have picked them, every one. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? Where have all the young girls gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? Taken husbands, everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? They're all in uniform. Oh, when will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? My only complaint about this song is that maybe it's not specific enough. It's too easy just to say, when will we ever learn, without being what you're really talking about.
And there we have it. I'm just going to jump in here because the video then cuts out and it comes in with the next performance, so we don't get to hear what Pete says after this point. But if you guys do want to check out this whole performance, it is a gig that he played in Sweden in 1968. I'm going to leave the link to it in the description below so you guys can watch it the whole way through if you want to. So when getting into this performance, it is just as much about the song and the lyrical content and the message of the song as was always the case with Pete Seeger. And this is just one of those songs that's been covered so many times by so many different artists. And interestingly, the Kingston Trio did a version of this thinking it was a traditional song, but then Pete Seeger let them know that it was his song that he wrote and then he got credit for it. But when I talk about it being covered by lots of different artists, that goes for artists in different genres as well, because we have covers from Johnny Rivers and Dolly Parton, Dusty Springfield, The Searchers, Peter, Paul and Mary as well, Richie Havens. This is one of those songs that did hit a chord with so many people because of the message And just being anti-war, this is something that Pete really did stand up for and was very vocal about. This song was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2002, and with Pete Seeger's writing very early on when he was part of the Almanacs, they were described as a singing newspaper, and they ran into trouble because their songs are so direct with the lyrical content and so political and controversial to the governments at the time that they wouldn't be played on the radio. They would get banned because of the content of the songs. Whereas Pete Seeger, as he started to write in the late 50s and 60s, started to have a more indirect approach, but he would still leave it down to the public, the people listening to the song, to work out what the song was about. And this is a great example of it. You'll find that all of the top singer-songwriters and just artists in general never waste time. They make use of every single bar of a composition, every single lyric, and they also ask questions with their compositions and their messages overall. Pete Seeger is a shining example of this, the way that when you listen to one of his songs, he's asking you questions, but he's not telling you what to believe. He's making you question what you believe. So the music was very much a vehicle for the message. And once people had listened to the song, understood what it's about, and then asked themselves questions about their own beliefs, then it was a case of giving a voice to those beliefs. And people connected with the music on such a deep level because of the depth of the writing, but also the message within. When people agreed with that, it could now have something that people have in common. They've got something that they can join together on, a movement they could start, because you've got a common ground and something that everybody will be listening to and connecting with. And this is very much Pete Seeger in a nutshell, bringing people together with similar beliefs in order to make a change. So getting into the composition, we've got a really simple chord progression here, just 4 chords that are going to be looped around. We've also got Pete staying in this talking range, so you can hear every word really clearly, and that is the point. That's exactly why Pete has his banjo quite low in the mix here, because he wants his words to stick out. And also, with really technical playing and a complex chord progression, it means that the music and that chord progression might start to take a little bit of the focus, because it needs a little bit more concentration from your audience to understand where you're going and to just digest the musical information. Whereas with a simple chord progression, it means that now you can start to focus on that vocal, and here it is very clear. We are going to get out the guitar and just go through the 4 chords, but also the way that Pete changes up his rhythm playing, not only in this performance, but also in other performances that you might have heard. Another thing that you'll find is that when you haven't got a complex melody going on and you don't have to strain your voice in order to hit the notes, it means that everyone can get involved. And this is something that used to happen with Pete's performances. He would call out to the audience and they would sing the song back. He would even give them the line of the song before it comes in so they can sing along and get involved. And this is exactly what you want when you're trying to spread a message or get people to focus on the lyrical content. If you can get them singing it, it means that they will understand it. And if you give them a vocal line that is really technical and difficult to sing, they're not going to connect with that. They're not going to physically repeat it because they haven't got the ability to do that. The clearer you want your message to be within your song relating to the lyrical content and people hearing every word, the more simplistic you want to make the chord progression and the backing, and the lower in the mix for live performances you want to have the instrumentation. And this goes back to a story that I read about Pete hearing Bob Dylan, and the first time that Bob played live and electric, Pete wasn't too happy about it because of the fact you couldn't hear the words. And this is what made Pete a little bit annoyed, and it did make the news, I think, back in the day. But it was because Pete thought that the amplification of the instruments were masking the lyrical content of Bob's songs. Just for reference, this is the performance at the Newport Folk Festival that I have mentioned quite a lot on this channel in previous videos, because it's one of those that does intertwine with lots of other bands' stories, but it was one of those performances that didn't go down particularly well and really did stand out. So just to show you guys what's going on with the chord progression, as you can tell, this isn't a banjo, it's a guitar. So I'm going to just convert it so that you guys can play it on the guitar if you've got your guitars out. We're starting in A, and what we have here with Pete, to begin with, he's starting by jumping through the root note down to what would be the D string on your guitar, and the picking on that right hand, obviously finger style here, it's just quite involved. It's just a roll that he's going through, and it's the 5-string banjo that he's playing. I haven't sat down and listened to it really slowly in order to work out exactly the roll that he's playing, the sequence that he's playing with his right hand. But if you're playing this on guitar, you pretty much will be going with the other performances where he gets a little jump and a bounce in the sound. And again, that I was using just an A chord at the bottom, and you can either jump down with your thumb, going from the A, then follow it with the D, and use your first and your second finger for the G string and the B string, and then work your way back down again from the D string to the A string with that thumb. Or you can just keep your hand in that fixed location so that your thumb is always on that A string, and then you use your first finger to pick that D, and then the G and the B is taken care of by the second finger on the right hand and the third finger. So we've got our A, F sharp minor, B minor 7th, into an E 7th, and then you go back to the A. And that's pretty much going to be it for that particular sequence on the right hand, jumping from the root note to then the D string and then the rest of the chord, and then coming back. So just going through the picking cycle that Pete did, just going straight through the chords. So straight up and down like that. And once you've gone through that cycle through the chord, you want to do it on your F sharp minor as well, the B minor 7th, and the E 7th. Just to mention that the right hand here is playing the D string with the first finger, the G with the second finger, and the B string with your third finger, and those aren't moving, those three fingers. The only thing that does move is your thumb when you're playing the A string. F sharp minor, my thumb's moved down to that low E string, it moves to the A string for the B minor 7th, and then back down to the E string for the E 7th. Just quickly, we do have some faster chord changes when Pete is singing, "When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn?" in that section. And that last bit that I did there is going down to an A sus2. He sometimes did that as well. And for reference, he sings it an octave below what I just did then. Also, just in case you don't want to get into the finger style or do any of the picking, you can grab a pick and just strum out these chords. Kind of like that. Strumming pattern will probably be fine. You can do your own strumming pattern if you want to, but that will just keep it moving along. I do want to get into a little bit of Pete's history and career in this video as well. His dad was a musicologist and composer. His mum was a concert violinist as well as a music teacher, but unfortunately his parents separated when he was 7 years of age. His uncle was the poet Alan Seeger, and his half-sister was Peggy Seeger, and Mike Seeger was his half-brother, so musicians all over the family, but he wasn't forced into music. He started playing the ukulele when he was at school, and in 1936 is when he first heard the 5-string banjo, and as soon as he heard it, he wanted to master it. He enrolled at Harvard College, but dropped out due to politics and wanting to perform folk music. He got a job at the Archive of American Folk Songs of the Library of Congress, and that was with one of his dad's friends called Alan Lomax. And Alan encouraged Pete to sing his folk songs. And at the age of 17, Pete was getting into activism, and during the war, late 30s, early 40s, he'd perform on radio, and in 1941 is when he joined up with the Almanac Singers and performed with them. They cut several albums, and it was politically outspoken and controversial. One of the albums was called Songs for John Doe, and that got removed from shops, and every copy was destroyed, and I think there must be a few copies in the hands of collectors around the world somewhere, but it gives you an idea of how it was perceived and how controversial it was seen as being. Anyway, he then served in the US Army in the Pacific, and he trained as an airplane mechanic, but he was then reassigned to entertain the troops, and at that point he then founded the Weavers, who were less overly topical and started to be seen as less controversial as the Almanac Singers, but it was still a bit close to the mark because Pete was like that. He just said it how he saw it. In 1948 is when Pete released his first book, and that's called How to Play the 5-String Banjo. Just to mention here as well that Pete invented his own banjo called the long neck or Seeger banjo, and it had 3 more frets available on the neck. The band were very popular, but unfortunately in 1953 they got blacklisted and got no radio airplay. They had all their bookings cancelled as well, but they did play in 1955 at Carnegie Hall, and that was a sellout. So it gives you an idea of how popular they were, even though they weren't allowed to play. In the late 1950s is when the Kingston Trio started up, and they were pretty much a direct imitation, playing lots of covers of the Weavers' tracks. Just to mention, in 1960, Pete had a gig booked at a high school, and they tried to get him to sign an oath to say that he wouldn't perform any political material or try and start a revolution, something crazy like that. But he refused to sign it, and the performance was then going to be cancelled, but he obtained an injunction to allow the performance to go ahead. So I don't know what happened to free speech back in the 60s, but it was something that was obviously tightly guarded. Ever since then, the high school has apologised for putting Pete through that experience. In the late 50s and early 60s, Pete experienced a lot of success, and the TV blacklist was now lifted, and he was being played on the radio as well. He had his own TV show called Rainbow Quest, and that was a regional show that featured lots of musical guests and very famous musicians that appeared on that. He was a big supporter of Bob Dylan. As I mentioned earlier, he got him to the Newport Folk Festival, where Bob played fully electric for the first time. It didn't go down particularly well, but it was Pete who got him there because he was a board member at the time. I don't want this video to go on for too long, but just to finish, he was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1972. Also in 1993, he received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. In 1996, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And throughout his career, he was a multiple Grammy winner. And he did pass away in 2014 at the age of 94. He was one of those people that wasn't going to back down, and he was going to stand up for his beliefs and also voice his opinions and ask questions of other people about their opinions and their beliefs as well. So a very interesting artist to take a look at, and thank you guys for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!